The woman's face was frozen in terror, her eyes wide with horror, as she screamed silently at me through the static. Her hands were raised above her head in surrender, but something was terribly wrong. The tracking was broken, making her image flicker like a corrupted GIF, one moment sitting calmly, the next writhing in agony. But those eyes never stopped staring directly at me. And then I heard the sound that made my blood run cold. Now let me tell you how I came to witness this nightmare. My name is David, and I run a small video and audio production studio. In recent years, with creators making their own content for streaming platforms, the demand for traditional studio recording has dramatically decreased. To survive financially, I started offering a service to digitize old footage and audio stored on magnetic tape. These days, this has become my primary business. In our modern streaming age, many young people have never even experienced buying physical media like CDs, DVDs, or Blu-rays to enjoy music and movies individually. People like me feel left behind by the times. But before DVDs and CDs existed, magnetic cassette tapes were the standard way to record and enjoy video and music content. You might still have old VHS tapes or even older 8mm film reels stored at your parents' house or grandparents' home. These magnetic tapes are very different from digital data. They're heavily affected by storage conditions. They can develop mold, or the tape itself can break from physical contact with the playback heads. Age-related deterioration is an unavoidable problem. There are precious 8mm films from the early Showa period, that's roughly the 1920s to 1940s in Japan, showing family gatherings and street scenes that serve as valuable historical records. When home video cameras became popular, fathers across Japan enthusiastically filmed their children's school sports festivals on VHS tapes. These media are quietly stored in homes throughout the country. Many families want to watch these nostalgic videos, but the tapes have worn out or they no longer have working video players. When I receive such requests, I borrow these tapes, adjust for video distortion and audio degradation, and digitize them so families can easily revisit their memories anytime. Seeing clients' joy when their deceased family members' memories come back to life truly warms my heart. Now, after that long introduction, let me tell you about the strange footage I encounter in this daily work. Sometimes I find peculiar recordings, like a child secretly filming their parents' argument through a sliding door crack, or, without going into detail, even personal adult recordings that I'd rather not describe. But one particular tape contained the most terrifying content I've ever experienced in my life. I want to explain what happened while respecting the dignity of both the people in the footage and my client. It all started when a man in his 70s brought me a single VHS tape. This gentleman was what you might call a first-generation gadget enthusiast. During the 1970s dawn of home computing, he spent most of his salary on equipment and devoted himself to programming. His knowledge of video and audio recording media and playback devices was so extensive that even I, a professional in this field, was impressed. This expert had given up and brought me the VHS tape because he couldn't do anything with it. He said only the first few dozen seconds could barely play, showing heavily distorted footage of what appeared to be a woman he dated before meeting his longtime wife, his ex-girlfriend. He certainly couldn't show such footage to his current wife after all these decades, but he couldn't bear to throw it away either. Moreover, he had absolutely no memory of recording such footage, so he wanted me to restore it just to see it once. I wondered if I could restore footage that even such a skilled man couldn't handle, but seeing his embarrassed expression sparked my personal curiosity. I agreed to take the job, with payment only if restoration succeeded. That very evening, I set the videotape in the specialized terminal and began playback. The footage showed a beautiful woman in her 20s wearing denim pants and a floral shirt, sitting on the edge of a bed in what appeared to be a sparse business hotel room. The woman placed both hands on her knees, straightened her back, and stared at the camera for a while. Just as her mouth began to open slightly, the footage started breaking up like stop-motion animation. With a buzzing noise, The bottom half of the image became scrambled, then the top half became distorted. Let me explain how VHS works for international viewers unfamiliar with this technology. VHS records signals on magnetic tape in what we call tracks. Think of them like roads or railroad tracks. Unlike today's digital data, if the video player's head doesn't align perfectly with the tape's tracks, the frame-by-frame footage shifts, causing images to flow up and down or collapse entirely. VHS manufacturers installed tracking knobs or switches, so users could adjust the tracks themselves to achieve clear video playback. But as time passed, and video players disappeared from the market, old cassette tapes left in homes deteriorated and became magnetized. Even when people managed to find video players, no amount of tracking adjustment could make them play properly. As a professional in video restoration, I can almost completely repair tracking-related problems using specialized optical equipment and digital software approaches. This is my specialty, so I immediately got to work. The woman's footage gradually stabilized, and audio became audible. As I mentioned, the woman stared at the camera silently for a while, then opened her mouth and began speaking fluently about her name, the day's weather, and a concert by a band that was probably popular at the time. This alone wouldn't be particularly strange footage, but things became eerie after about 3 minutes. The woman suddenly kept her feet on the floor while raising both hands in a surrender pose, then began repeatedly doing sit-ups, lying back on the bed and sitting up using only her upper body. If you try this movement yourself, you'll understand that without securing your feet somehow they inevitably lift off the ground when you sit up, creating a momentum-based abdominal exercise. However, the woman in the footage kept her feet perfectly planted on the floor while only her upper body moved with intense bouncing motions. Even more strangely, throughout this entire time, the woman continued speaking casually. Her voice tone contradicted her body movements, quiet and monotone, showing no signs of being out of breath. It was as if the audio had been dubbed separately from the video. At this point I noticed something I'd overlooked in the editing software's audio waveform data. What I'd assumed was stereo recording actually showed different waveforms for the left channel and right channel. What I'd been hearing as the footage cleared up was only the left channel. The right channel was muted. The moment I switched the signal output to the right channel, an ear-piercing sound erupted from the monitor speakers, nearly stopping my heart. This sound, impossible to describe as either voice or noise, was like someone screaming ek 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 ek, recorded multiple times over itself and heavily distorted. Even though I've worked on recordings for bands with excellent death metal vocals and I'm accustomed to loud sounds, this nauseating noise filled the studio. I felt dizzy and quickly cut the signal output to the monitor speakers. But the sound wouldn't stop. Feeling tremendous chills, I yanked out the speaker cables. But the sound continued. I probably lost consciousness shortly after. But just before fainting I saw the woman with her hands raised above her head. Her hair was standing on end. Her eyes were bulging, and she was screaming toward me. Due to the disrupted tracking, the woman's figure was distorted and jagged, rapidly alternating between sitting up and falling back like a crude 2-frame GIF animation. But that terrifying face was staring directly at me with perfect clarity. I'm embarrassed to say I fainted like that, and I don't remember if it was for minutes or hours. My colleague who works at the studio woke me by tapping my shoulder, and I'll never forget his awkward expression. "What are you watching?" he asked, looking at the monitor with a puzzled face. What appeared on screen was the hotel room space and bed I'd been editing. But where the young woman should have been sitting on the white sheets, there was only a reddish-black stain shaped like a human figure with arms stretched out in surrender. The stain extended along the bed's edge down to the carpet where the woman's feet had been, leaving clearly visible footprints. Wait, was she barefoot? Was the only thought that came to my mind as I stared at this strange footage. I explained what happened to my colleague and rewound the video. But the VHS now only showed the bed with eerie stains continuously. The recording cut off abruptly. "These things happen," my relatively philosophical colleague said, and I decided to stop thinking about that VHS any further. I told the client that the footage couldn't be restored and returned the tape. The man seemed very disappointed, but I felt like I might have unearthed some terrible past. So I gently suggested he dispose of it. This became a rather rambling account, but thank you for reading to the end. If you have old home videos sleeping in your family storage, I recommend digitizing them before they deteriorate beyond repair. But I have to ask you this: if you found footage of someone you once knew, someone who might no longer be with us, would you really want to see what they left behind? Or would you be afraid that some memories are better left undisturbed? What would you do if you discovered that the past refuses to stay buried?